The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 847 different worlds filled the massive hall, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some floated in special atmosphere bubbles, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystal shells. At the center of it all stood Elder Vexithari, his tall crystalline body glowing with soft blue light. As one of the oldest members of the council, he had seen many crisis meetings, but this one felt different. The tension in the air was thick enough to taste, even through the various breathing apparatus scattered throughout the chamber. "Fellow council members," Vexithari began, his voice carrying easily through the universal translators. "We are here to discuss the human problem. Again." A collective groan rose from the assembled delegates. The humans had become a frequent topic of discussion over the past few years, and never for good reasons. "Let me remind you of the facts," the elder continued, his crystalline form pulsing brighter with each word. 3 months ago, the Zalathi Corsairs attacked a human colony ship. Standard piracy, nothing unusual. The humans responded by hunting down the entire Zalathi fleet and destroying every single ship. Not just the pirates, their entire navy. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Zalathi had been a minor but persistent nuisance for centuries, raiding trade routes and causing trouble, but they had also been careful never to push too hard, knowing the council would eventually step in. The humans had solved the Zalathi problem in less than a week. Before that, Vexithari went on, the Korathian Empire tried to claim the Epsilon system, which humans had already colonized. The Korathians sent a diplomatic fleet to negotiate. The humans sent back the wreckage of that fleet along with a message that simply said, no. More uncomfortable shifting among the delegates. The Korathians were known for their advanced technology and military might. They had been expanding their territory for thousands of years without serious opposition. And 6 months before that incident, the Hive Collective attempted to assimilate a human research station. The humans not only fought off the assault, but somehow tracked the Hive ships back to their home cluster and sterilized 3 entire worlds. The chamber fell silent. The Hive Collective was one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. They consumed entire civilizations, turning conquered peoples into mindless drones. No one had ever successfully counterattacked against them before. Ambassador Kelnith of the Wisdom Seekers raised one of her 6 arms. "Elder Vexithari, perhaps the humans simply have superior military technology. Many young species compensate for their lack of experience with advanced weapons." The elder's light dimmed slightly. "That's what we thought at first. Our intelligence reports suggested they were a typical developing civilization. Aggressive, yes, but nothing we hadn't seen before. We gave them the standard first contact protocols and expected them to fall in line like everyone else." He gestured to a holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Earth, population approximately 8 billion. They achieved space travel only 2 centuries ago. By all measurements, they should be centuries away from being a real threat. "Then how do you explain their recent actions?" asked General Thrackmore of the War Guild, his reptilian features twisted in confusion. "We believe they interpret proportional response differently than the rest of us," Vexithari explained. "When someone attacks them, they don't just defend themselves, they eliminate the entire threat, permanently." The chamber erupted in discussion. Several delegates argued that such behavior was barbaric and uncivilized. Others worried about what would happen if the humans decided the council itself was a threat. Vexithari waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "The situation has reached a critical point. Human territory has expanded by 300% in the last year alone. They're not conquering worlds. They're simply moving into unclaimed systems and establishing colonies faster than we can map them." "What do you propose we do?" asked Chancellor Mordeth of the Trade Federation. The elder's form brightened until it was almost painful to look at. "We send them a final warning. Make it clear that their aggressive expansion must stop, or they will face the combined might of the entire Galactic Council." "And if they refuse?" General Thrackmore asked. "Then we assemble the largest fleet in galactic history and show them the consequences of defying the Council's authority." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the message was composed and prepared for transmission. It was written in formal galactic standard, using the most diplomatic language possible while still making the threat clear. "To the human government of Earth. Your recent military actions and territorial expansion have violated numerous galactic treaties and conventions. This serves as your final warning. Cease all aggressive activities and withdraw to your original solar system or face immediate military action from the combined forces of the Galactic Council. You have 30 standard days to comply. The message was transmitted on all standard frequencies toward the Sol system. It carried the full authority of the Council and was guaranteed to reach any civilization with basic spacefaring technology. What the Council didn't know was that Earth's deep space monitoring network was undergoing routine maintenance. The 3 massive listening posts that normally watched for incoming signals had been shut down for equipment upgrades. The backup receivers were operational, but they were tuned to completely different frequencies, ones the humans used for their own communications. The Council's final warning shot passed Earth's outer sensors like a whisper in a hurricane, mixed with the cosmic background radiation and disappeared into the void, unheard and unnoticed. On Earth, life continued as normal. Admiral Sarah Chen finished her morning briefing at Fleet Command without any knowledge that her species had just been threatened by the most powerful political body in the galaxy. Dr. Marcus Webb continued his research into faster-than-light communication systems, unaware that a message meant for him was already flying past Pluto. In the small city of Geneva, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez reviewed the latest reports from human colonies. Everything seemed peaceful. Trade was good, new. Settlements were thriving, and there had been no hostile contacts with alien species in months. She made a note to request additional funding for colonial development and closed her files for the day. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Galactic Council began assembling its enforcement fleet. Ships from dozens of worlds converged on the rally point, creating the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. 10,000 vessels of every size and configuration, crewed by the finest warriors from across known space. Fleet Commander Zephyros stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the massive armada take shape. In his 4 centuries of military service, he had never seen anything like it. The combined firepower could crack planets and level entire star systems. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we've received confirmation from all fleet elements. 10,000 ships ready for deployment." "Good," Zephyros replied. "Set course for the Sol system. It's time these humans learned their place in the galactic order." As the enforcement fleet began its journey toward Earth, the 30-day deadline continued to count down. The humans remained completely unaware of the approaching storm, going about their daily lives without any idea that the largest military force in galactic history was heading straight for them. The Council's final warning had been sent, but the humans hadn't heard it. Soon, that simple communication failure would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Captain Sarah Chen was having a perfectly normal day patrolling the outer edge of human space when everything went wrong. The bridge of the UES Defiant hummed with its usual quiet efficiency, and her crew was relaxed after 3 weeks of routine. "Patrol duties. Nothing exciting ever happened out here in the frontier systems." "Captain?" Lieutenant Torres called from the communication station. "I'm picking up some kind of transmission. It's pretty garbled, but it looks like it might be artificial." Sarah turned from the navigation display she'd been studying. "Put it through the filters and see what you can make of it." The ship's advanced AI worked for several minutes, trying to clean up the signal. What came through the speakers was fragmented and distorted, but clearly not natural background radiation. Aggressive expansion, militaristic actions, combined. Might. Final warning. Sarah felt her blood run cold. In 3 years of deep space patrol, she had never intercepted anything like this. "Can you tell where it came from?" "Negative, Captain. It's too degraded. Could have bounced off a dozen relay points before we picked it up. Run it through the language database. See if we can identify the source." More minutes passed as the computer analyzed the fragments. Finally, the results appeared on Sarah's personal display. The words were definitely from an artificial language system, but not one in their database. That meant alien origin. Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. The frontier colonies had been reporting strange sensor readings for weeks. Nothing concrete, but enough to make people nervous. And now they were intercepting what sounded like military communications, mentioning aggressive expansion and final warnings. "Torres, get me a priority channel to Fleet Command. Use the emergency codes." "Yes, ma'am." Admiral Marcus Torres was reviewing supply reports when the priority signal came through. Sarah Chen was one of his best captains, and she didn't use emergency channels lightly. "Admiral," Sarah's voice came through with a slight delay of long-range communication. "I've intercepted what appears to be alien military communications. The fragments mention aggressive expansion, militaristic actions, and something about combined might and final warnings." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Intelligence had been tracking unusual deep space activity for months, but nothing concrete enough to justify raising the alert level. This might be the confirmation they'd been dreading. "Send me everything you have, Captain. Full analysis and your recommendations." "Already transmitted, sir." Admiral, if someone out there is planning military action against us, we need to assume they know our capabilities and locations. This could be preparation for a massive coordinated attack. Marcus closed his eyes and thought about the reports sitting on his desk. Strange energy readings near 3 different colony worlds. Unusual. Gravitational disturbances in the shipping lanes. Merchant vessels reporting brief contacts with unknown vessels that disappeared before positive identification could be made. Individually, none of it had seemed significant. Together with Sarah's intercept, it painted a terrifying picture. Captain, maintain your patrol but increase scanning range to maximum. Report anything unusual immediately. Understood, sir. Marcus cut the connection and immediately called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Within 2 hours, every senior military official in human space was connected to a secure conference. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, we may be facing the largest threat in human history. Captain Chen has intercepted what appears to be alien military communications discussing aggressive expansion and final warnings. Combined with recent unusual sensor readings, I believe we're looking at preparation for a massive invasion. General Patricia Hayes, head of Colonial Defense, was the first to speak. What's our force disposition if something like this happens? Not good enough, Marcus admitted. We have maybe 200 active military vessels scattered across 40 systems. If we're facing a coordinated attack by an advanced alien civilization, we're seriously outgunned. What are you recommending? Asked Director James Walsh of Fleet. Intelligence. Marcus took a deep breath. Full military alert. Activate all reserve fleets. Begin immediate construction of additional vessels at every yard we have, and he paused, knowing what he was about to suggest would change everything. I think we need to consider activating the Damocles Protocol. Silence fell over the conference. The Damocles Protocol was humanity's most closely guarded secret. During their expansion into space, human engineers had quietly placed automated weapons platforms in strategic locations throughout known space. Officially, they were deep space monitoring stations. In reality, they were planet-killer weapons, designed to strike at any threat to Earth. Marcus, General Hayes said carefully, are you sure this situation warrants that level of response? Patricia, if an advanced alien civilization is planning to invade us, we need every advantage we can get. The Damocles platforms are designed to operate independently if Earth is attacked. They could be our only chance of survival. The vote was close, but the motion passed. Within hours, coded signals went out to monitoring stations across the galaxy. To any observer, they looked like routine maintenance commands. In reality, they were activation orders for the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. At the same time, the Galactic Council's enforcement fleet was making its way toward human space. Fleet Commander Zephyros reviewed the intelligence, reports on human capabilities while his ships traveled through hyperspace. According to Council records, humans had achieved spaceflight only 2 centuries ago. They should have primitive weapons and basic defensive systems. Commander, his tactical officer reported, long-range sensors are detecting unusual activity in human space. Multiple energy signatures consistent with large-scale construction projects. Zephyros studied the readings with growing confusion. The humans appeared to be building something big and building it fast. The energy output suggested massive industrial activity across multiple star systems. Perhaps they're attempting to construct defenses, he mused. It won't matter. No developing civilization could build anything capable of standing against this fleet. What Zephyros didn't know was that humanity's developing civilization status was based on outdated information. In the 2 centuries since achieving space flight, humans had been busy. Very busy. The shipyards orbiting Luna had been expanded dozens of times. The asteroid mining operations in the Sol system produced more raw materials than most galactic civilizations used in a year. And human engineers had a particular talent for taking existing technology and making it work better, faster, and more efficiently than anyone thought possible. As the Council fleet approached the halfway point to Sol's system, humanity's industrial machine roared to life. Shipyards that normally produced 1 vessel per month retooled to build 5. Emergency protocols activated manufacturing facilities that had been kept in reserve. Mining operations tripled their output to feed the hungry. Construction yards. In the outer colonies, civilian engineers volunteered to convert merchant vessels into warships. Mining platforms were equipped with military-grade weapons. Even passenger liners received armor plating and defensive systems. The transformation was staggering. In the space of 3 weeks, humanity went from a peaceful trading civilization to a fully militarized society preparing for total war. Every available resource was redirected toward the war effort. Every person with technical skills was recruited for military service. And still, Neither side knew what the other was really planning. The Galactic Council believed they were conducting a police action against an upstart species that needed to be taught respect for galactic law. The enforcement fleet was designed to intimidate, not destroy. They expected the humans to surrender as soon as they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Humanity believed they were facing an invasion by an advanced alien civilization that intended to destroy or enslave them. Every action they took was based on the assumption that this was a fight for survival, with no possibility of surrender or negotiation. The stage was set for the greatest misunderstanding in galactic history, and both sides were rushing headlong toward a conflict that neither had actually wanted. Ambassador Kel Nara of the Thraxian Republic had always believed in the power of peaceful communication. In her 3 centuries of diplomatic service, she had prevented 7 wars and negotiated peace treaties between dozens of hostile species. When the Galactic Council asked for volunteers to make one final attempt at peaceful contact with the humans, she immediately stepped forward. Elder Vexathari, she had said during the emergency session, someone needs to talk to them before. This situation gets completely out of control. Let me try to establish proper diplomatic contact. The Elder's crystalline form had pulsed with concern. Kel Nara, our intelligence reports suggest the humans are in a state of military preparation. It could be dangerous. All the more reason to try diplomacy, she had replied. If we can explain the misunderstanding, perhaps we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Now, as her small diplomatic vessel approached the Sol system, Kel Nara reviewed everything known about human culture and communication. The information was limited, but encouraging. Humans seemed to value direct communication and had shown diplomatic flexibility in previous encounters with other species. Her ship, the Peaceful Dawn, was designed specifically for diplomatic missions. It carried no weapons, only the most advanced communication systems available. Its hull was painted in the traditional Thraxian colors of peace, and it broadcast standard diplomatic identification codes on all frequencies. Ambassador, her pilot called from the forward station, we're receiving multiple scanning beams from the inner system. The intensity suggests active military sensors. Kel Nara frowned. Are they targeting us specifically? Hard to tell. There's a lot of activity throughout the system. I'm reading energy signatures from thousands of vessels and installations. Thousands? Kel Nara moved to the sensor display and felt her breath catch. The Sol system was lit up like a festival celebration. Energy readings filled every screen, indicating massive military preparation. How many ships do the humans have? Computing? Ambassador, I'm reading at least 50,000 active vessels. And those are just the ones we can detect clearly. Kel Nara stared at the display in shock. According to Council intelligence, the humans should have had a few hundred ships at most. 50,000 vessels suggested military capabilities far beyond anything in the official reports. Open a diplomatic channel, she ordered. Use all standard frequencies and protocols. The message was broadcast in formal galactic standard, the language of peaceful negotiation used throughout civilized space. Sol system vessels. This is Ambassador Kel Nara of the Thraxian Republic, representing the Galactic Council. I come in peace, seeking diplomatic contact with the human government. Please respond. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the UES Retribution, Captain James Mitchell was having the worst day of his career. Earth's newest dreadnought had been rushed into service 3 weeks early because of the invasion threat, and half the crew was still learning their stations. The last thing he needed was an unidentified alien vessel appearing in the system during maximum alert status. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Park reported from the sensor station. We have a single vessel approaching from the outer system. Configuration, unknown, but it's small. Could be a scout ship. Mitchell studied the tactical display. The approaching ship didn't match anything in their database, but that meant nothing. If the aliens were planning an invasion, they would certainly send scouts ahead to gather intelligence. Are they responding to our identification challenges? They're transmitting something, but it's not in any language our computers recognize. Wait. Park worked at his station for a moment. Sir, the AI thinks it might be some kind of formal communication protocol, like a surrender demand or ultimatum. Mitchell felt his jaw tighten. After weeks of preparation for invasion, having an enemy vessel arrive and immediately start making demands was the final insult. Power up weapons systems. Send them a message they'll understand. The Retribution's massive railguns hummed to life, their targeting systems locking onto the approaching diplomatic vessel. The message was transmitted in clear English. Unknown vessel, you are in violation of human space during a military emergency. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. On the Peaceful Dawn, Kel Nara watched in growing alarm as weapons targeting beams focused on her ship. The human response came through her translators as a harsh demand for immediate surrender. "Ambassador," her pilot called urgently. "They're powering weapons. Multiple target locks detected!" Kelnara's mind raced. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to work. The humans were treating her diplomatic mission as a hostile action. "Are our diplomatic codes transmitting properly?" "Yes, ma'am. Full. Diplomatic identification on all standard frequencies. Then they either don't recognize our codes, or they're choosing to ignore them." Kelnara made a quick decision. "Activate ceremonial shields. If they're going to be hostile, we need to protect ourselves while we try to establish communication." The Peaceful Dawn's ceremonial shields flickered to life around the small vessel. They were purely symbolic, designed to show respect during formal diplomatic encounters. The energy output was barely enough to stop cosmic radiation, much less military weapons. On the Retribution's bridge, Lieutenant Commander Park watched the alien vessel's energy signature change. "Sir, they've activated some kind of defensive system. Energy output is increasing across multiple frequencies." Captain Mitchell had seen enough. An enemy scout ship had entered the system during maximum alert, ignored surrender demands, and was now powering up weapons or shields. The tactical situation was clear. "All batteries, open fire. Destroy that vessel." The Retribution's railguns spoke with thunder. Tungsten slugs accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance to the diplomatic ship in seconds. The ceremonial shields of the Peaceful Dawn lasted exactly 0.3 seconds against the assault. Kelnara had just enough time to realize what was happening before her ship disintegrated around her. The last thing she transmitted was a desperate message on the emergency diplomatic frequency. "Council vessel destroyed by human forces. They opened fire on a diplomatic mission. This is an act of war." The message was picked up by automated council monitoring stations and immediately relayed to the enforcement fleet. Fleet Commander Zephyros received the transmission while reviewing deployment orders for the approaching Sol system. "Sir," his communications officer reported. "Emergency transmission from Ambassador Kelnara's mission. Her ship has been destroyed by human forces." Zephyros felt rage building in his chest. Attacking a diplomatic vessel was the most serious war crime in galactic law. It violated every treaty and convention that civilized species held sacred. "Are you certain of this report?" "Yes, sir. The transmission came directly from the ambassador's vessel just before it was destroyed. She confirmed they were operating under full diplomatic protocols when the humans opened fire." Zephyros stood slowly, his forearms clenching into fists. In 4 centuries of military service, he had never encountered such barbarity. The humans had not only ignored the Council's warning, they had murdered a peace envoy. "Signal all fleet commanders. Change of operational status. We are no longer conducting a police action. This is now a military response to war crimes. The humans have proven they cannot be reasoned with." The enforcement fleet accelerated toward the Sol system, but their mission had fundamentally changed. They were no longer coming to intimidate or negotiate. They were coming to punish a species that had violated the most basic principles of civilized behavior. Back on Earth, Admiral Marcus Torres received Captain Mitchell's report with mixed feelings. The destruction of the alien scout ship proved that human weapons could penetrate their defenses, which was encouraging, but it also meant the invasion was definitely coming. "Sir," his aide reported, "long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet approaching the outer system. Current estimates suggest over 10,000 vessels." Marcus nodded grimly. "Then it begins. Send the activation codes to all Damocles platforms. If they want a war, we'll give them one they won't forget." Neither side realized that what was about to happen could have been prevented with a simple conversation. The Galactic Council's enforcement fleet was coming to punish what they saw as unprovoked aggression and war crimes. Humanity was preparing to defend itself against what they believed was an invasion by a hostile alien civilization. The greatest misunderstanding in galactic history was about to explode into the largest space battle ever fought. And it all started because a diplomatic message was sent on the wrong frequency, and a peace envoy was mistaken for a scout ship. In the empty space where the Peaceful Dawn had been destroyed, debris continued to drift slowly through the void. Among the wreckage was a small diplomatic beacon, still transmitting its message of peace in a dozen languages, but there was no one left to hear it. Fleet Commander Zephyros had expected many things when his enforcement fleet arrived in the Sol system. He had expected to find a primitive civilization cowering behind basic defenses. He had expected desperate surrender transmissions and pleas for mercy. He had even expected some token resistance from whatever crude weapons the humans might have built. What he had not expected was to find the most heavily fortified star system in recorded galactic history. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice cracking with disbelief. Sensor analysis is complete. I'm reading 53,000 active military vessels. Repeat, 53,000. Zephyros stared at the main display, where thousands of red contacts filled the screen like angry stars. That's impossible. Run the scan again. Already confirmed, sir. Multiple sensor sweeps, all showing the same results. And that's just the active vessels. There appear to be massive stationary installations throughout the system. The fleet commander moved to the tactical station and reviewed the data himself. What he saw defied every intelligence report the Council had ever compiled about human capabilities. The Sol system had been turned into a fortress that could challenge the combined navies of half the galactic powers. How? He whispered. How did they build so much in such a short time? Sir, the communications officer called, we're receiving a transmission from the human forces. Put it through. The voice that came over the speakers was calm and professional, speaking in accented galactic standard. Alien fleet, this is Admiral Marcus Torres of the United Earth Space Force. You have entered human space with obvious hostile intent. You have 30 seconds to reverse course and leave our territory, or we will consider you an invasion force and respond accordingly. Zephyros felt his anger flare. These humans had murdered a diplomatic envoy and were now threatening the largest military fleet in galactic history. Their arrogance was beyond belief. Open a channel, he ordered. Human Commander, I am Fleet Commander Zephyros of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. You will surrender immediately and submit to Council authority or face the consequences of your war crimes. The response came back quickly. We recognize no authority beyond our own. You have invaded our space with a hostile fleet. Leave now or be destroyed. Sir, the tactical officer interrupted. The human vessels are powering weapons. All 50,000 of them. Zephyros looked at the display again. Energy readings were spiking throughout the human fleet as weapons systems came online. The power outputs were staggering, suggesting technology far more advanced than anything in the Council intelligence files. They're bluffing, he decided. No species could develop such capabilities in only 2 centuries. Begin the attack! Target their largest vessels first. The Galactic Council fleet opened fire with weapons that had conquered 100 worlds. Plasma beams and particle cannons reached across space toward the human defense lines. It should have been the opening move in a swift victory. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. They fired back immediately. Impossible! The tactical officer shouted. Their weapons are fully charged. No one can maintain battle-ready status on that many ships simultaneously. The space between the 2 fleets erupted in a storm of energy as thousands of weapons fired at once. But within seconds, it became clear that something was terribly wrong with the Council's assumptions about human technology. The human weapons were faster. Their targeting systems were more accurate, and their tactical coordination was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. Sir, we're losing ships, the tactical officer reported. Human weapons are penetrating our shields like they're not even there. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. Their energy weapons appear to be operating on principles we don't understand. And their kinetic weapons... He paused, checking his readings again. Sir, they're firing solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. The impact energy is enormous. Zephyros watched in growing horror as his magnificent fleet began to take casualties. Ships that had served the Council for centuries were being destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist. The humans were fighting with technology that violated several physical principles he thought were universal constants. All ships concentrate fire on their command vessels. If we can break their coordination, we can still win this. But the human coordination didn't break. If anything, it seemed to get stronger as the battle progressed. Their ships moved in perfect synchronization, creating overlapping fields of fire that trapped Council vessels in killing zones. When one human ship was destroyed, others immediately moved to cover the gap. Worse, the human tactical doctrine was completely alien. They didn't fight like civilized species, with careful positioning and measured exchanges of fire. They fought like predators, using speed and aggression to overwhelm their enemies. They took risks that should have been suicidal and somehow made them work. Sir, his aide called urgently. We're receiving damage reports from all sectors. We've lost over 2,000 ships in the first hour of engagement. 2,000 ships. Zephyros had been in major battles before, but he had never seen such devastating casualty rates. The Council fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to treat the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. What about their casualties? He asked. Minimal, sir. Best estimates put their losses at fewer than 300 vessels. The numbers didn't make sense. A 10-to-1 loss ratio against a supposedly primitive species was impossible, but the sensor readings didn't lie. The human fleet was barely scratched while the Council forces were being slaughtered. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the Korvaxi Heavy Cruiser Squadron. They're requesting permission to withdraw. They've lost 60% of their ships." Denied. All ships will maintain position and continue the attack. But even as he gave the order, Zephyros could see the battle was lost. The human defenses weren't just holding, they were pushing forward. Human ships were advancing through the Council formations, destroying everything in their path, and then the humans revealed their final surprise. "Sir, massive energy signatures detected throughout the system. Something's powering up." On the tactical display, new contacts appeared, dozens of them scattered throughout the Sol system. They had been hidden among the asteroids and small moons, invisible until they activated. "What are those?" Zephyros demanded. "Unknown, sir. But the energy readings are—" The tactical officer's voice failed him. "Report!" "Sir, each of those installations is generating more power than our entire fleet combined." The Damocles platforms had awakened. For decades, they had waited quietly in the darkness, disguised as mining stations and communication relays. Now they revealed their true purpose as humanity's ultimate defensive weapon. The platforms opened fire and space itself seemed to scream. Beams of coherent energy lanced out across impossible distances, striking Council ships with surgical precision. Each shot was a ship killer, designed to crack planets and shatter moons. "All ships, emergency withdrawal!" Zephyros shouted. "Full retreat! Get us out of here!" But it was too late. The human fleet had surrounded them, cutting off escape routes with practiced efficiency. The Damocles platforms continued their devastating bombardment, while human ships closed in for the kill. The battle that was supposed to demonstrate the Council's overwhelming power had become a massacre. Of the 10,000 ships that had entered the Sol system, fewer than 1,000 remained operational. The rest had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. "Sir," his communications officer called, "Admiral Torres is transmitting again." "Put him through." The human admiral's voice was still calm, but now it carried a note of cold satisfaction. "Fleet Commander Zephyros, your invasion has failed. You have 30 minutes to gather your surviving vessels and leave our system. If you're still here when the deadline expires, we'll finish what you started." Zephyros looked at his tactical display one more time. The human fleet had barely been touched, their defensive platforms were still operational, and more human ships were arriving from the outer system, apparently summoned by some kind of rapid communication system. He had brought the largest military force in galactic history to crush a primitive species, and instead had suffered the most devastating defeat in recorded military history. The humans hadn't just won, they had made it look easy. "Signal all remaining ships," he said quietly. "We're leaving." As the shattered remnants of the Council fleet limped away from the Sol system, Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched them go. The victory had been complete, but he felt no satisfaction. The cost of the misunderstanding was staggering. "Sir," his aide reported, "final casualty reports. We lost 437 vessels. The aliens lost approximately 9,000. Marcus nodded slowly. 9,000 ships, each with hundreds or thousands of crew members. Tens of millions of beings had died because of a missed communication and a series of tragic misunderstandings. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what would happen next. The galaxy now knew that humanity existed, and that they were capable of destroying the largest military fleet ever assembled. The age of human isolation was over, and Marcus wasn't sure the galaxy was ready for what was coming next. The council chambers had never been so quiet. Where once 847 representatives had gathered in noisy debate, now barely 200 remained. Many species had recalled their ambassadors after hearing the news from Sol system. Others had simply stopped responding to communications altogether. Elder Vexathari stood alone at the center of the great hall, his crystalline form dim and cracked. The weight of what had happened seemed to have aged him centuries in just a few days. Around him, the surviving council members sat in stunned silence. "The investigation is complete," he announced, his voice barely carrying through the vast chamber. "We have determined the cause of this disaster." A holographic display materialized, showing communication logs and technical readouts. "Our original warning to the humans was transmitted on standard diplomatic frequencies. However, Earth's deep space monitoring network was offline for maintenance during the transmission window. The message was never received." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Kelneth of the Wisdom Seekers raised one of her 6 arms. "Are you saying this entire conflict was caused by a communications failure?" That was the beginning, Vexathari confirmed. But the situation escalated due to a series of misunderstandings on both sides. When Captain Chen intercepted fragments of our enforcement fleet's communications, the humans interpreted them as evidence of an planned invasion. And Ambassador Kelnara's mission? Asked Chancellor Mordeth. Vexathari's light flickered painfully. The humans were in a state of maximum military alert. When a single unidentified vessel approached their system and activated energy shields after ignoring surrender demands, they responded as they would to a hostile scout ship. The silence that followed was deafening. The greatest military disaster in galactic history had been caused by a missed message and a series of tragic accidents. What is the current status of our enforcement fleet? General Thrackmore asked quietly. Of the 10,000 ships we sent, 873 returned to Council space. Most are heavily damaged and will require months of repair. Vexathari paused. Total casualties are estimated at 47 million personnel. The number hit the assembly like a physical blow. 47 million of the galaxy's finest warriors, scientists, and support crew had died in a battle that should never have happened. And the humans? Someone asked. Their casualties were minimal, perhaps 20,000 total. Their defensive capabilities were... Vexathari struggled to find words. Beyond anything in our database. Fleet Commander Zephyros reports that human technology appears to be centuries ahead of our intelligence estimates. How is that possible? Chancellor Mordeth demanded. They achieved spaceflight only 200 years ago. Our initial contact. Protocols may have been inadequate, Vexathari admitted. We categorized them based on their technological development at first contact, not their rate of advancement. In 2 centuries, they appear to have made technological leaps that should have taken millennia. The implications were staggering. If humanity could advance so quickly, what would they be capable of in another century? Another millennium? What do we do now? Asked Admiral Cassiandra of the Border Patrol. Vexathari activated another display, this one showing star charts of known space. Red dots began appearing throughout the galaxy, marking the locations of human activity. This is our current intelligence on human expansion. Since the battle at Sol System, human ships have been detected in over 300 systems. They appear to be conducting some kind of rapid exploration and colonization program. They're expanding into Council space? General Thrackmore asked. No, Vexathari replied. They're avoiding all inhabited systems and claimed territories, but they're moving into unclaimed space faster than we can track. Our best estimates suggest they're establishing new colonies at a rate of 5 to 10 per day. The assembly erupted in nervous chatter. 5 to 10 new colonies per day was an expansion rate beyond anything in recorded history. Most species took decades to establish a single new world. Elder Vexathari, called Ambassador Telmaven of the Neutral Zone, have the humans made any attempts at communication since the battle? None. They appear to be completely ignoring all Council communication attempts. However, Vexathari hesitated. We have detected what appear to be human monitoring stations in several strategic locations. They're watching us. The thought of being observed by the species that had just shattered the Council's military might send chills through the assembly. What were the humans planning? Were they preparing for another attack? Or were they simply making sure the Council didn't try? Again, I believe, Vexathari continued, that we need to consider the possibility that the balance of power in the galaxy has fundamentally changed. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our own in virtually every category. Military, technology, industrial capacity, expansion rate, tactical coordination. They appear to be superior to us in every measurable way. What are you suggesting? Chancellor Mordeth asked. I'm suggesting that we need to completely re-evaluate our relationship with humanity. We can no longer treat them as a developing species to be guided and controlled. They may now be the dominant power in this region of space. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had been the supreme authority in known space. The idea that a species they had dismissed as primitive could challenge that authority was almost incomprehensible. There is one more thing, Vexathari said quietly. We've received reports from several border systems about unusual human activity. They appear to be dismantling something. Large installations that weren't there before the battle. What kind of installations? Unknown. But the energy signatures suggest they were weapons platforms of some kind. Massive ones. The realization hit the assembly like a cold wave. The humans had been prepared for the Council's attack before it happened. They had built weapons specifically designed to counter a large-scale invasion. The question was, how long had those weapons been there? How Long have they been watching us? Ambassador Kelneth whispered. No one had an answer. 3 weeks later, a small human vessel approached the outer perimeter of Council space. It transmitted a simple message on standard diplomatic frequencies. Request permission to approach for diplomatic contact. The message caused panic throughout the Council hierarchy. After weeks of silence, the humans were finally ready to talk. But what did they want? Elder Vexthari personally authorized the approach, and within days he found himself face-to-face with the first official human diplomat in galactic history. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez was a small, middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked completely harmless, which somehow made her more terrifying than any alien warrior Vexthari had ever encountered. Elder Vexthari, she said in perfect galactic standard, I come bearing a message from the United Earth government. We are prepared to listen, Vexthari replied carefully. Elena activated a small holographic projector. The image showed a simple document with official seals and signatures. This is a formal treaty proposal, she explained. The terms are quite simple. The Galactic Council will respect human territorial claims and expansion. In return, humanity will not interfere with Council activities in established Council space. Vexthari studied the document carefully. It was surprisingly reasonable, considering the Council's recent military defeat. And if we refuse? He asked. Elena's smile never wavered, but her eyes grew cold. Then you'll find out why we built those weapons platforms in the first place. Elder Vexthari, my government has been monitoring Council communications for over 50 years. We know about every military installation, every fleet movement, every strategic resource in Council space. The Elder felt his crystalline form crack slightly. You've been spying on us. We've been protecting ourselves, Elena corrected. When we first detected your civilization, we had to determine whether you represented a threat. We concluded that you did, so we prepared accordingly. For 50 years? For 50 years. Those platforms you saw during the battle, we have similar installations in orbit around every major Council world. If you ever threaten Earth again, we won't just defend ourselves. We'll end the Council permanently. Vexthari stared at the human ambassador in horrified fascination. The species he had tried to intimidate with a show of force had been capable of destroying the Council for decades. They had chosen not to, apparently out of simple disinterest. Why? He asked. Why reveal this now? Because the secret is out, Elena replied. Your attack on our system has demonstrated our capabilities to the entire galaxy. Other species are already approaching us about alliances and trade agreements. The age of Council dominance is over. She stood and gathered her materials. You have 30 days to consider our treaty proposal. After that, we'll assume you've chosen the alternative. As the human ambassador left the chamber, Vexthari realized that everything had changed. The Council's final warning had been ignored, not through defiance, but through simple accident. And that accident had revealed that humanity had been ready for galactic war long before the Council had even known they existed. The galaxy would never be the same, to be